Farm Week is a production of the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Today on Farm Week, conservation and forest education in Mississippi will benefit for years to come because of a recent gift to the Bulldog Forest.
In today's Southern Gardening segment, have a specific mood you want your landscape to convey to visitors? Gary says be sure to choose the right plants.
In the markets, the supply and demand outlook for grains grows more bullish as projections of bigger beef supplies sends live cattle futures lower.
In the feature segment, think you have too little land or too little knowledge to start tree farming? Well, one of the state's top tree farmers started as a rank amateur and ended up being the Mississippi Tree Farmer of the Year.
When I started, I knew absolutely nothing, but what was good, I knew I didn't know anything. So my mentor was Dr. Terry Ozier, who was the National Tree Farmer of the Year. I went to his field days in Rankin County. I went to every short course.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Artis Ford. Welcome to Farm Week. Conservation and forestry education in Mississippi will benefit as a result of a generous gift.
Artis, more than 350 acres of longleaf pine trees and unique wildlife habitat has been added to the forest land owned by Mississippi State University. The land adjacent to Camp Shelby in South Mississippi will be added to the more than 18,000 acres of timberland owned by MSU and designated for teaching and conservation purposes. Known as the Bulldog Forest, this new addition is a win-win situation for the state and the U.S. military.
Remember one of them particularly.
A gift from Mississippi State alumnus and Moss Point native Davis Mortensen made the latest addition to the Bulldog Forest possible. The 352 acres of timberland near Hattiesburg is adjacent to Camp Shelby and located at the southwest corner of the military installation's property.
When I was first approached about participating in the Bulldog Forest program, the two key factors that sold me on the idea was the fact that it's going to be a teaching forest, and also the proceeds from the timber harvesting will be used for scholarships for MSU students. And to me, that's a very important element.
The project involved several partners. The gift from Mortensen enabled the MSU Foundation to acquire the property. There were also funds from the Department of Defense, which wanted to establish the forest as a buffer around that portion of Camp Shelby. And the Nature Conservancy holds a working conservation easement on the property to allow for timber production and harvesting.
We've worked with Camp Shelby and the Army National Guard for a number of years. We've worked with Mississippi State with their scientists and other experiences. And again, this is just a wonderful, wonderful day. The Davis and Ann Mortensen Forest is expected to be an important living laboratory for Mississippi State students because of the longleaf pine ecosystem and special wildlife habitat on the property.
Both the forestry and the wildlife students will learn how to manage timber as well as how to protect special, unique habitats that support the gopher tortoise, the red cockaded woodpecker, and the black pine snake, all threatened and endangered species.
For the military, the Forest County Timberland is the first privately funded ACUB site in the state. ACUB is an acronym for the term Army Compatible Use Buffer.
The partnership with the various entities allows us to begin the process of developing the buffer around Camp Shelby so that we can ensure compatible use with civilian development. It's an incredible opportunity for us.
The university currently has more than 18,000 acres in the Bulldog Forest program. From Hattiesburg, Mississippi, I'm Leighton Spann reporting.
Plant selection is very important in getting the right garden atmosphere. In this week's Southern Gardening segment, Extension horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman shows us some beautiful examples.
Selecting plants appropriate to the site is important to communicate the landscape to the viewer. Today I'm visiting Catherine and David in their wonderful garden. Catherine and David are real do-it-yourselfers when it comes to their landscape. I just love the stone wall built around their pool area. This created a unique opportunity by raising the planting beds closer to eye level, which makes plant selection important. The selection of purple pixie loropetalum is a great choice. These slow-growing plants will grow to 1 foot tall with a 3-foot spread and will not overwhelm the planting bed. The foliage color complements the rose colors of the wall. Catherine loves zinnia. Profusion zinnia in mixed colors are planted in pockets and is a good choice for the hot summer landscape. Profusion zinnia were selected as Mississippi Medallion winners because they are great garden performers. Moving up the back hill reveals a true wow moment. Catherine has mass planted a wall of larger flowered zinnia elegans. She uses these multicolored zinnias for cut flowers, which she shares with all of her friends. While she plants new rows each spring, volunteers pop up at various places around the garden and landscape to be enjoyed. Just beyond the zinnias is a large vegetable garden to feed the body and soul. Catherine has a less formal area beside her small greenhouse that is used for extra flowers and herbs. This area does not follow any particular planting plan, and even though we're in Mississippi, this planting bed reminds me of an English cottage garden. It's taken some hard work, but Catherine and David have created a wonderful and relaxing garden retreat. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening.
Gary says, don't let plant selection paralyze you. Choose what you enjoy and then group accordingly. Time now for the let's feature segment first, though. Julian Watson, 2009 Outstanding Tree Farmer of the Year, is in the feature tonight. Watson wasn't a tree farmer when he started, but he turned an erosion-ridden farm into a place of beauty. Now it's time for the markets with Leighton, and you say we've had a few volatile days in the grain markets.
No, that's the understatement.
Understatement? Okay.
Wednesday's USDA report really rocked the markets, and looking at our headlines, some analysts say $10 a bushel corn and $20 a bushel soybeans may be possible. Meanwhile, drought is also expected to increase feedlot placements of cattle, while hog farmers are forecast to face a year of losses. Our top story in the markets is the surprise in Wednesday's USDA reports, a reduction in the average U.S. corn yield of 20 bushels per acre. The government also slashed some soybean projections. Extension Ag economist John Michael Riley discussed the impact of these new numbers with me Thursday morning. John Michael, some very important changes here for both corn and soybeans in this week's reports.
Some would call it a shocker. In fact, I saw that headline quite a bit yesterday. We're going to the corn numbers that were published yesterday in the World Ag Supply and Demand Report estimates. They dropped the corn yield per acre down by 20 bushel an acre to right at 146. That's a change from 166 a month ago. Trade was looking for that number to be about 152. In fact, the lowest estimate was 147. So it was even outside that low end of the range, and it's just a very unusual move from USDA. Usually they're very slow, very methodical about how they make these changes to the reports from month to month. So that big change was very unexpected. But I think it speaks to the fact that the corn crop is under a lot of pressure. Crops in the Midwest are under, very dry, very hot conditions, and I think there is a lot of fears out there. Continues to be lots of fears about what that final number will be, and what the impact to yields are.
All right, and as far as soybeans, we had a yield reduction there as well, right?
That's correct. You probably should say that as well. Right at 40 bushels an acre for soybeans, down 3.5 bushel an acre from the previous month. Mostly in line with what we're expecting. They think 41 was the expectation, so a little less drastic than what we saw in the corn market yesterday.
But again, no doubt the bottom line, there is damage to those crops in the Midwest from drought.
We don't know that yet because next month we'll start getting some objective field data in those yield numbers. But from all accounts, it really, if it isn't, I think it would be a shock if it isn't damage to the corn and severe damage to the crop.
All right, and obviously the reaction that everybody could see this week, prices skyrocketed as a result of these new numbers.
Well, we thought they would, and they did at first, but then the market came down as this report became more and more digested. We saw the supply numbers drop because of the yield reduction, but we also saw demand reduced, and that's not uncommon. With this tight supply situation, you're going to see some rationing of both of these crops, and so demand numbers were reduced. It's still ending stocks are expected to be low, very low stocks to use numbers, so this implication is going to weigh heavy on the market, but we did see the market react kind of mixed yesterday.
Let's look at our trivia quiz as Farm Week continues. Our question is about rice. Here it is. What is the most common and troublesome weed of Mississippi rice? Is it Palmer amaranth, hemp sesbania, barnyard grass, or morning glory? I'll have the answer for you in a few more minutes.
We're going to pause for a short break on Farm Week. Coming up, we'll look at the calendar in the second part of the markets. Leighton Spann reports on fall calf prices, feeder cattle, and the hog market. In the feature segment today, some say they don't know enough about tree farming to try it. Julian Watson of Holmes County, Mississippi was that way when he started, but he ended up being a tree farmer's tree farmer.
Each year, many Mississippians are seriously injured or killed in farm tractor accidents. Transporting and lifting objects with a front loader requires extreme caution. Unsecured objects can roll or slide down the loader arms and injure the driver. To help prevent injuries, tractors should be equipped with a falling objects protection system. Always secure loads or use a bale spear or straps before lifting objects. A message from the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Before we get back to the markets, let's look at the Farm Week calendar. The Mississippi State University Extension Service is hosting a warm season grass forage tour. It takes place Saturday, July 28th. The location is the South Farm at MSU in Starkville. Tours will run from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Now, there's no registration fee, but early registration is encouraged. You'll see teff grass, crabgrass, sorghum, bahia grass, and Bermuda grass trials. You'll also learn about forage fertility and quality. Rice producers have been given their own field day this year at Stoneville. It takes place Tuesday, July 31st. Registration gets underway 2 p.m. with trailer tours of the field plots beginning at 3:30 p.m. A reception will follow at 5:45 at the Delta Council's office at Stoneville. Please pre-register in order to be eligible for door prizes. We will have a link on the Farm Week website calendar. Go to our Farm Week calendar at farmweek.msucares.com for information on these and other events. Now check out this week's Farm Week Snapshot.
The higher corn and soybean prices we talked about just a moment ago certainly don't bode well for animal agriculture. Feed costs will likely go up sharply. In the beef sector in particular, there's also the problem in parts of the country of deteriorating pasture conditions. This situation is expected to increase placements in the feedlots. Analyst Mark Gold told Market to Market recently that higher corn prices alone will keep the pressure on feeder cattle.
The feeder cattle were the big drag with corn prices going through the roof. No wonder, feeder cattle takes a huge hit. We're well off the highs. We're trying to come back here. We may have seen the worst, particularly if the corn has made its highs in here, then we can see the feeders come back. If we take another $1 jump in the corn, the feeders are going to remain under pressure, and that's going to be a drag on the fat cattle market as well.
Extension Area Livestock Agent Mike Howell notes that CattleFax says that buyers are looking at next April's live cattle futures to try and determine what to pay for calves this fall. Howell thinks it may be worth consideration for cow-calf producers to look at forward pricing their calves to take advantage of the futures market's April optimism. The calf market's seasonal price trend moves lower into fall. Howell says potential buyers may be reluctant to give as much for calves later in the year if the futures market optimism fades. Well, the quarterly hogs and pigs report from the government was surprisingly not a surprise, according to many analysts. Many market watchers described it as pretty much neutral. Analyst Jamie Kohaki recently summarized what those new pork numbers told him.
What that report reiterated to me is producers need to be really nimble with their fourth quarter through second quarter of next year's sales. And that's talking 82 cents for December and looking out into like February, April too of the 2013 contracts. I think the numbers get big out in there. We're seeing some expansion, and of course some will play out, see how the corn plays out. But I think the 82 mark in December to step in with some hedges there next week.
Purdue Extension economist Chris Hurt said this week the Midwest drought and its impact on feed prices may create a financial disaster for the hog industry. He notes that higher feed costs cannot be immediately passed on to the consumer, but there are short-term impacts for producers. Farmers sell animals quicker and at lighter weights, and even begin the liquidation of some entire herds, especially by this fall. This can result in increased slaughter and may cause some downward pressure on animal prices. And by the time the producers do receive any compensation for higher feed costs, they have been through a prolonged period of losses, a length of time that some farmers may not survive, according to Purdue economist Chris Hurt. Well, we close out this segment, the markets, with that trivia answer we promised to give you, and here it is. A survey this year by the Southern Weed Science Society says that C is the right answer. It's barnyard grass that's the most common weed of Mississippi rice.
When you mention tree farming to some people, they answer they haven't attempted it because they don't know anything about it or where to start. Well, that was Julian Watson of Holmes County in the mid-1980s. He's the same Julian Watson who was eventually named in 2009 as Mississippi's Outstanding Tree Farmer of the Year. Farmweek was there when he began to plant pines on his family's land. Watson said he learned tree farming by seeking out competent advice from public agencies and private forestry consultants.
I think it's my only alternative. I think whether I can save it for and manage it myself, which is my plan now, or to potentially sell it, I think a timber company would be much more interested in it.
Julian Watson of Madison may have been brand new to forestry in 1984, but he's a tree farmer's tree farmer now. It's hard to believe today, but this land south of Lexington, Mississippi was like the agricultural economy then, in bad shape. Watson and his mother took the land out of pasture and began leasing it to soybean farmers in the mid-1970s. The price of soybeans was high, so rents were good. Then came the farm economy crash of the mid-1980s. Crop prices dropped and so did land lease payments, especially if it was low fertility soil. The last year the land was planted, the soybeans were never harvested. The hilly land eroded terribly.
As the natural resources told me, if I didn't do anything, it was going to be washed so badly that I couldn't, it wouldn't be usable. And it was getting washes nearly chest high in some areas. And it was pointed out that I was losing 30 to 50 tons of topsoil, and now we're losing virtually no topsoil and got a beautiful stand and outstanding wildlife.
This is the same field once ridden with erosion, now looking beautiful, almost park-like. Watson says he sought out forestry expertise from the Mississippi State University Extension Service, the Mississippi Forestry Commission, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. If there was a forestry field day, he was there.
When I started, I knew absolutely nothing, but what was good, I knew I didn't know anything. So my mentor was Dr. Terry Ozier, who was the National Tree Farmer of the Year. I went to his field days in Rankin County. I went to every short course. My first short course was under my good friend that's gone now, Paul Dillard, and they were two of my main mentors starting, plus every government program, every consultant I could find to learn everything I could.
Watson studied what government forestry incentives might suit his land, such as the Conservation Reserve Program. The late Paul Dillard says the cost of government programs that promote forestry are paid back many times by the economic activity tree farming creates.
I think it's a great success story for conservation, for your tax dollars at work. Out here, you're going to find that he's going to return far more money to the federal treasury when he pays his capital gain tax and so forth, and you've got a logging crew here today that are earning an income and so forth, and for really a fairly meager government investment out here.
Rusty Williamson, Holmes County forester with the Mississippi Forestry Commission, nominated Watson for the honor.
Well, not only do we need to recognize him for what he's done on this piece of property, but we also need to recognize him for what he can do for our Mississippi Tree Farm program. As far as the leadership in all of the county forestry associations, Mississippi Forestry Association executive committees, he founded the Holmes County Forestry Association, which is thriving today.
He has been instrumental. Not only did he help found the Holmes County Forestry Association, but as somebody alluded to, his enthusiasm is contagious, and it has been throughout the county association. He's encouraged people. He's brought them out to show them on his property what he has done with the burning, with the thinning, with everything that goes on.
Watson is actually a member of 6 county forestry associations. He served as president of the Holmes and Hines associations.
He is exactly what a tree farmer of the year should be. He's out here implementing, doing, educating people, forming the forestry association here. He's very active in the forestry community, and that goes a long way with me.
Past Extension Service forester Tim Troggett says Watson not only seeks out forestry advice, he has a forestry management plan, and he sticks to it.
The key to Julian is that he will implement it. He actually puts it to use, or puts it into effect on his tree farm so he can benefit from it.
Watson thins his 1,000 acres at the proper time. It is controlled burned and forestry herbicides are used. This has developed excellent wildlife food sources and habitat, resulting in income from hunting leases. While he follows his forestry management plan to the letter, he's not afraid to change it when market conditions dictate. Watson and his mother have sold so-called carbon credits. Companies that emit carbon dioxide, like electric utilities, are willing to pay forestry landowners to store CO2 in their trees. Not all timberland is suitable, but some of the Watsons did qualify for the carbon credits program. Hurricane Katrina also changed Watson's harvest plans. It destroyed many trees in South Mississippi, including those suitable to be poles. Watson says some of his trees should eventually be pole material, so he'll watch that market, and he hopes it will work in his favor.
He knows how many acres he has and when it was cut and when it was planted, he knows the density on the thinning, how many trees we left per acre.
Dismukes and the Vaden Timber Company have thinned Watson's trees and advised him on management. Watson's land is producing as much timber as the land can support. Since the first thinning about 1989, Watson's land has hosted a 1/10 of an acre test plot. Each year after Labor Day, Watson meets with the MSU Extension Service to measure the plot's growth. It's helped to determine when thinning should take place. Watson's intensive management style may not suit everyone, but most landowners can step up their timber income by getting free advice from government agencies or employing a forestry consultant.
Many forest landowners, they still have the impression that it just takes too long to grow trees. Well, you look at Julian, he's a relatively young man. And when he started where we're standing right now, this was a soybean field. And look at the timber on it today. And he'll end up harvesting this timber and replanting it again. And knowing Julian, he'll probably end up harvesting that too.
It was a full-blown plantation with a store, grist mill.
The Franklin Presbyterian Church on the Watson property is symbolic of Watson's true motivation for taking care of the family land. His great-grandfather and great-grandmother came from Virginia to settle the area. The church building is actually the second one on the site. Watson is its caretaker, which at present includes a new coat of paint. It was a hospital during the Civil War, and the repaired cannonball holes are still easily seen in its walls.
My great-granddaddy gave this land for the church, and then a gentleman that was an elder in this church turned it over to me about 10 years ago, and we have about 100 people all over the United States that have family buried out here that help me keep it up, and we have one service a year the week after Easter.
While his ancestors were more familiar with clearing trees than growing them, Watson says making the family land into a tree farm was the right decision.
I put it in trees in 1985, and my family thought I was crazy, and I farm it without any equipment using vendors, and it's the best decision I ever made.
Well, go to our Farm Week website if you'd like to see this story again. That's farmweek.msucares.com. If you're interested in managing your land for timber and wildlife, you can get in touch with the Mississippi State University Extension Service or the Mississippi Forestry Commission. The Natural Resource Conservation Service of the U.S. Department of Agriculture is another good place to start. We'll have their contact information on our Farm Week website. Now, Leighton, of course, that story aired some time ago originally. Unfortunately, Paul Dillard has passed away. In that meantime, and Britton Hatcher is now working for Farm Bureau, Mississippi Farm Bureau. But, you know, you can have a small acreage. You know, we've heard of even 20 to 25 acres that can grow some fantastic amounts of timber. So just get started somewhere. Well, we are at the end of Farm Week for this week. On our next show, we'll have a feature story version of Farm Week.
See how Mississippi's forest industry banded together to build a Habitat for Humanity house in Meridian. It used a sustainable forestry initiative to illustrate how sustainability is possible from the landowner to the mill to the homeowner.
You'll also return to Iowa for an update on the original baseball field used in the 1989 movie Field of Dreams.
In Southern gardening, purple cone flowers. This All-America selection is a perennial in most parts of Mississippi.
For the rest of the Farm Week crew, I'm Artis Ford.
And I'm Leighton Spann. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week.